What if the things you say are quietly shaping how people see you long before you realize it? In this video, we explore the deeper truth behind communication, silence, and human relationships through a lens often reflected in the thinking of Jack Ma. Not the public speeches, not the success stories, but the quieter philosophy behind what should never be said and why. This is not about social rules. It is about understanding how words can slowly change trust, distance, and power between people. How a single sentence spoken at the wrong moment can alter a relationship without warning. And how those who have lived longer begin to realize that silence is not weakness, but precision. If you have ever felt a connection fade without explanation, or wondered why some conversations never feel the same again, this video will help you see what was always there but rarely noticed. Subscribe if you value deeper conversations, quiet truths, and stories that stay with you. What if the moment people began to see you differently was not something you did, but something you said? Not a lie, not an insult, just a sentence that felt ordinary. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt that something had shifted? No argument, no tension, just a quiet distance you could not explain. Have you ever noticed how some people stop opening up to you without ever telling you why? We like to believe words disappear, that once they are spoken, they are gone. But they are not. They settle in the room, they stay in the mind, and sometimes they change how people remember you. Not all at once, not loudly, but slowly and without warning. And the most dangerous part is this: no one ever tells you which words caused it. You only realize it later. There is a kind of honesty people admire when they are young, the kind that says everything exactly as it is, the kind that refuses to soften the edges, the kind that believes truth on its own is always enough. It feels clean, it feels strong, it feels respectable, until you begin to notice what it leaves behind. Because truth, when it arrives at the wrong moment, does not feel like truth. It feels like exposure. There are moments when someone is not asking for clarity. They are asking for space. Moments when they are holding themselves together in ways you cannot see. And then a sentence is spoken, carefully chosen, factually correct, delivered without hesitation. And something shifts. They do not argue. They do not defend themselves. They do not even disagree. They simply become quieter. The conversation continues, but not in the same way. Something has been withdrawn. You may not notice it then. That is what makes it dangerous. There is no clear damage, no visible break, just a small, silent decision being made. The next time they speak to you, they hold back a little more. The next time they trust you with something, it is less. And over time, without any single moment you can point to, you realize the distance was not created in one conversation. It was built, one honest sentence at a time. Not every truth builds a bridge. Some truths arrive too early, and when they do not connect people. They separate them. There is something else people rarely notice. It is not what you say about yourself. It is what you say about someone who is not in the room. A passing remark, a small judgment, a sentence that feels harmless because the person it is about cannot hear it. It often begins quietly. A comment about someone's choices, a tone of mild disapproval, a detail shared that did not need to be shared. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel on the surface. But the person listening is not only hearing your words, they are studying them. They are asking themselves a simple question without even realizing it. If this is how you speak about someone else, how will you speak about me when I am not here? And something shifts. Not immediately, not enough to end the conversation, but enough to change how safe they feel. They may still smile, they may still respond, but a quiet boundary begins to form. They share less, they reveal less, They trust more carefully. Because trust is not broken in loud moments. It erodes in small ones. Moments where nothing seems wrong, yet something feels slightly off. And over time, those small moments collect. Until one day, the connection is no longer what it once was. Not because of a single mistake, but because of a pattern that was never acknowledged. The moment you speak about someone else, you are no longer describing them. You are revealing yourself. And people remember that far longer than you think. There is a quieter mistake, one that feels almost innocent at first. It begins the moment you decide to be honest about yourself. Not in a proud way, not to impress anyone, but in a moment of trust. You speak about something that matters to you, a fear, a weakness, a part of your life you do not usually show. And for a brief moment, it feels right. Because being understood feels rare. And when someone listens, truly listens, it feels like you have made the right choice. But not everyone listens to understand. Some people listen to remember. They store what you say, not out of care, but out of quiet calculation. And nothing happens immediately. That is what makes it so difficult to recognize. The conversation ends. Life moves forward. You think nothing of it, until one day, something returns. A sentence, a tone, a reaction that feels slightly misplaced. And then you realize what you once shared in trust is no longer safe. It may not be used directly, not in a way you can confront, but it lingers beneath the surface, in the way they speak to you, in the way they respond, in the way they see you. And something changes, not loudly, not suddenly, but permanently. Because once someone sees where you are vulnerable, they cannot unsee it. And if they are the wrong person, they will never forget it. There is a reason people who have lived longer speak less about what hurts them. It is not because they have nothing to say. It is because they have learned not everyone deserves to hear it. There is another kind of mistake, quieter than the rest. It does not damage trust directly. It does not expose you, but it takes something from you before it even has the chance to exist. It begins with a simple urge, the urge to speak about what you are going to do, a plan, an idea, something small still forming. You share it not for approval, but for connection, to make it feel real. And for a moment, it does. People respond. They react. They offer opinions you did not ask for. Some sound supportive. Some sound uncertain. Some sound dismissive in ways they do not even realize. And something inside you shifts. Not dramatically. Not enough to stop you immediately, but enough to slow you down. Because once something is spoken, it is no longer yours alone. It becomes exposed to doubt, to judgment, to perspectives that were never part of your original intention. And slowly, the clarity you once had begins to blur. You start to question things you were once certain about. You hesitate where you once moved forward. And over time, the energy that was driving you fades. Not because the idea was wrong, but because it was seen too early. There is a reason people who have done things quietly rarely speak about them beforehand. They protect the fragile stage. They keep it untouched because some plans do not fail in execution. They fail the moment they are spoken. And then there is the most dangerous moment of all. Not when you speak about others, not when you reveal your plans, but when you reveal how much someone matters to you. It does not feel like a mistake. It feels honest. It feels human. You say it without calculation, without strategy. You let someone know that they matter, that you value them, that their presence in your life is not ordinary. And for a brief moment, it feels right. Because connection is built on openness, and openness requires risk. But there is something people rarely admit. The moment you show how much you need someone, the balance changes. Not visibly, not in a way you can point to, but in subtle ways. They respond a little slower. They take a little more space. They begin to move with less urgency, not because they are cruel, but because they feel secure. Secure in a way that shifts the weight of the relationship. And slowly, without confrontation, you begin to notice something uncomfortable. You are waiting more, thinking more, adjusting more, trying to preserve something that no longer sits evenly between you. It is not dramatic. There is no clear moment where things fall apart, just a quiet imbalance that grows over time. And the difficult truth is this: the more you show you need someone, the less they feel the need to hold on as tightly. Not always, but often enough to matter. There is a reason people who have lived longer care deeply but speak carefully. They do not hide their feelings. They simply refuse to place them where they cannot be respected. And after all of this, something begins to take shape. Not a rule that anyone taught you, not something written down, just a quiet understanding that forms over time. You begin to notice who speaks less, who chooses their words carefully, who leaves certain things unsaid even when they could say them. At first it looks like restraint, like distance, like a lack of openness, but it is not. It is selection, a slow, deliberate choice about what deserves to be spoken and what is better left in silence. Because silence is not empty. It holds judgment back. It protects what is still fragile. It keeps certain truths from doing damage they cannot undo. People who have lived long enough understand this. They have said too much at the wrong time. They have trusted the wrong ears. They have watched something good fade without ever knowing the exact moment it began. And so they change, not in a loud way, not in a way that others always notice, but in the way they speak. Shorter, slower, more precise. Not because they have less to say, but because they have learned what it costs to say the wrong thing. And perhaps that is the part no one explains. It is not about becoming silent. It is about becoming careful, knowing that words do not disappear. They remain in how people remember you. They remain in how close people allow you to get. And sometimes, what you choose not to say is the very thing that keeps everything else intact. And if you look back carefully, you may begin to see it in your own life, not as a single mistake, not as one moment you can clearly name, but as a pattern, a conversation that never felt the same again, a person who slowly stepped back without explanation, an idea that once felt certain and then quietly disappeared. At the time, it did not seem important. Just words, just honesty, just a moment of openness. But now with distance, something becomes clearer. It was never just what you said. It was when you said it, who you said it to, and what it revealed, without you intending to. That is the part no one prepares you for, because no one sits you down and tells you that some sentences do not end when you finish speaking. They continue in the silence that follows, in the way people respond, in the way they hold back, in the way they quietly decide how much of themselves they will show you next time. And once that decision is made, it rarely returns to what it was before. So over time, without making a conscious choice, you begin to change. You pause just a little longer before speaking. You observe just a little more before sharing. You keep certain things where they cannot be misused, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Because the truth is not that you should say less. It is that you should know what is never meant to be said at all. And in the end, it is not the loud mistakes that stay with you. It is the quiet ones, the sentence you did not think twice about, the moment you spoke too early, the time you trusted the wrong silence. They do not return as regret all at once. They return slowly, in the spaces between conversations, in the way certain names no longer appear, in the feeling that something once close is now just out of reach, and there is nothing dramatic to point to. No argument, no ending, just a gradual distance that no one explains. That is how these things work. Not through conflict, but through accumulation. One sentence here, another there, until one day, without a clear beginning, something has already changed. And by the time you notice it, there is nothing left to correct, only something to understand. So you move forward differently, not closed, not distant, but aware. You listen more carefully. You speak more deliberately. You leave certain things where they belong, unsaid, because some words do not need to be spoken to be true, and some truths are meant to remain yours. And perhaps this is the part no one says out loud. There is a difference between being open and being exposed, between being honest and being unguarded, between speaking freely and giving something away that cannot be taken back. When you are younger, those lines are not clear. You believe closeness is built by saying more, that trust grows the more you reveal. And sometimes that is true, but not always, because not everyone you meet is listening with the same intention you have. Some listen with care, some listen with curiosity, and some simply listen long enough to understand where you are most vulnerable. You do not see it then. It does not feel like danger. It feels like connection. And that is why it matters. Because the mistakes that shape you the most never feel like mistakes in the moment. They feel right. They feel natural. They feel like you are doing exactly what you are supposed to do, until time passes and something no longer feels the same. And you realize it was never about saying too much. It was about not knowing what should have been kept, not hidden, not suppressed, but held with care, given only where it would be understood. And perhaps that is what changes as you grow older. You do not stop speaking. You simply learn who is worthy of hearing you and who is not. And if there is one thing that remains after all of this, it is not a rule. It is a recognition that words are not light. They do not drift away once spoken. They do not disappear into nothing. They land. They settle inside people. They shape how they measure you, how they remember you, and more quietly, how they limit you. You may never hear it. No one will tell you. This is the moment I decided to step back. No one will say, that sentence changed how I see you. It happens in silence, in decisions made without announcement, in distance created without conflict. And that is why it is so easy to miss. Because there is nothing to defend yourself against, only something to understand. Too late. So you begin to live differently. You realize that not everything inside you needs a voice. Not every thought deserves to be shared. Not every truth needs to be delivered. Some things are stronger when they remain within you, not as secrets, but as boundaries. And once you understand that something becomes quieter inside you, you no longer feel the need to explain everything, to reveal everything, to be fully known by everyone. Because being understood is not about being completely exposed. It is about being seen in the right places. And perhaps that is the final shift. You stop asking, can I say this? And you begin asking, should this ever be said at all? And once that question settles, everything changes. Not in a dramatic way, not overnight, but in the small pauses before you speak. You begin to notice the space between thought and word. A brief moment that used to pass unnoticed. Now it lingers, long enough for you to ask yourself what this sentence will leave behind. Not what it proves, not how true it is, but what it will do once it is heard. Because that is what matters. Not the intention you carry, but the effect you create. And slowly you begin to understand something that only comes with time. That control is not shown in what you say. It is shown in what you choose not to release. You can still be honest. You can still be real. But now there is a filter. Not fear, not hesitation. Just awareness. Awareness that some things once spoken do not stay in the moment. They travel. They reshape how people place you in their mind, how close they allow you to come, how much they are willing to reveal in return. And when you see that clearly, you no longer speak to fill silence. You speak with purpose, or not at all, because silence, when chosen, is not emptiness. It is precision. It is restraint. It is understanding that not every truth belongs in the open. And from that point on, your words become fewer, but they carry more weight, not because they are louder, but because they are necessary. And after a while, something else becomes clear. It was never about avoiding mistakes completely. That is not possible. Everyone says something they should not. Everyone speaks too soon or to the wrong person at least once. That is not the lesson. The lesson is what you carry forward from it, because those moments leave a mark. Not visible, not immediate, but they stay with you in a quiet way, in the hesitation you did not have before, in the awareness that was not there when you were younger. And slowly you begin to recognize patterns, the kinds of conversations that lead nowhere, the kinds of people who take more than they give, the moments where silence would have protected more than words ever could. You start to see it before it happens. And that is when everything shifts, not in what you say, but in how you decide. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything, to comment on everything, to explain yourself at every turn, because you understand something simple and difficult, that your words are not just expressions. They are decisions. Each one places something of yours into someone else's hands. And once it is there, you no longer control what happens to it. So you become selective, not distant, not cold, just careful. Careful about who hears your truth. Careful about when it is spoken. Careful about what it might become once it leaves you. And in that care, there is a kind of quiet strength. Not the strength of speaking boldly, but the strength of knowing when not to speak at all. And eventually, you stop thinking about it as a rule. It becomes instinct. You walk into a conversation and feel it immediately. What belongs there and what does not. You sense the weight of a sentence before it is spoken. You recognize when a moment calls for words and when it asks for silence. Not because you are holding back, but because you have learned what certain words cost. And once you have seen that clearly, you cannot return to the way you spoke before. There is a calm in it, a kind of stillness. You no longer rush to fill the space. You no longer feel uncomfortable with quiet, because you understand that silence is not a lack. It is a choice, a deliberate one. And in that choice, there is control, not over others, but over yourself, over what you give, over what you keep, over what remains yours, no matter who is in front of you. And perhaps that is what changes most. You stop trying to be fully known. You stop offering every thought, every truth, every feeling to anyone who listens. Instead, you become precise. Not everyone hears everything. Not every moment receives your honesty. Not every person is given access. And that is not distance. That is understanding. Because in the end, it was never about speaking less. It was about knowing what should never have been said in the first place. And if there is anything left to take from all of this, it is something simple. Not obvious, but simple. You do not lose people in one moment. You lose them in small shifts. A sentence that lands at the wrong time. A truth given to the wrong ears. A feeling placed where it cannot be held. None of it looks like damage until time passes. and something is no longer there, and you realize it was never taken from you. It was given away, piece by piece, through words that felt harmless, through honesty that felt right, through openness that felt deserved, until it was not. And that is why, as everything becomes quieter, your way of speaking changes. You no longer chase understanding. You no longer offer everything hoping it will be received well. You begin to accept something far more grounded, that not every truth needs an audience. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every feeling should be placed outside of you. Some things are stronger when they remain where they began, not hidden, but protected. And once you understand that, there is a kind of peace in it. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it protects. And in that balance, you keep more of what would otherwise be lost. And when you reach that point, there is nothing left to prove. No need to explain yourself in full. No need to be completely understood, because you begin to see something clearly. That being known by everyone was never the goal. It only felt that way when you did not yet understand what it meant to give too much away. So you move differently. You listen without rushing to respond. You observe without needing to comment. You let moments pass without inserting yourself into them, not because you have nothing to say, but because you know what is worth keeping. And over time, something settles inside you, a quiet confidence, the kind that does not rely on being heard, the kind that does not depend on being validated, just an understanding that you no longer need to offer every part of yourself to feel real. Because the truth is, some of the most important parts of you were never meant to be spoken out loud. They were meant to be lived. And once you accept that, you stop losing pieces of yourself in places that were never meant to hold them.